Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. My guest today is Dr. Ashley Finley, Vice President of Research and Senior Advisor to the President for the Association of American Colleges and Universities. Ashley has had a long career in higher ed, including at AAC&U, where she was the National Evaluator for Bringing Theory to Practice project, Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and Deans at Dominican University of California and at Dickinson College. AAC&U just published its 2025 Employer Survey, the first survey in 2 years, and Ashley, as its author and principal investigator, joins me today to discuss its implications on higher education, what employers really think about a college degree, hint, very good, and for the first time ever, breaking demographics down by political affiliation with some surprising revelations. Ashley, welcome back to the program. It feels like old home week for me.
I know. It's great to see you, Drumm. Thanks for making time to have this conversation. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. You guys just released your 2025 report on employers and what they want. I was blown away when I read it. It's just fabulous stuff. But before we get into that, please tell my listeners what I already know, what a great person you are in this role, and give us a little bit of your background.
No, thanks. I'm privileged to be in this role. I am the Vice President of Research and Senior Advisor to the President at AAC&U, the American Association of Colleges and Universities. And with regard to me, I'm a sociologist by training. Actually, my background as a sociologist was in work and occupation. So I just kind of dig this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's just kind of my jam. I'm like, work is cool and work is interesting, and why people do work and how people end up in the kind of work they're seeking is very much always something that I've been very interested in. So it's a great pleasure to be able to do this research. And for AAC&U, which I think adds a particular lens on the way that we tell this story, and we actually think about what the employer narrative is around the skills that matter, the skills and experiences that matter for students. We are a membership association. We've been around for over 100 years, 110 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the oldest. And I always like to say that one of the reasons that AAC&U stands out or is a little bit different in the landscape of higher ed associations, nonprofit associations, is that we are an association united by an idea rather than a single stakeholder type or a single sector of college or university. So we serve all stakeholders. We do tend to work mostly on the academic affairs side within the curriculum, but technically, we serve all stakeholders that are invested in higher education and all sectors. And that is because our membership is united by an idea. And that is that all students should have access to an education that frees the mind. And that is, by definition, a liberal education, but it's from the Latin root libere, which is to free. And so that is an education that allows students to expand their thinking, free their mind, and think for themselves.
I wish I could remember all that. It's just, I have always admired AAC&U for the work that you've done. I was first exposed to it with your rubrics.
Yeah, the value rubrics.
But then as you and I have met, and you've educated me on all the different things that AAC&U does. It's an incredible organization, 110 years.
Thank you. Yes. And I think for the relevance of our conversation today, right, it's a very old association. And so we have a long view on how learning has changed. For example, we started out as AC It was the Association of American Colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 90s, we added the U to acknowledge the expansion of the kinds of institutions we were working with, that we needed to expand and work with universities. And then in around 2020 or so, we changed to the American Association of Colleges and Universities rather than the Association of American Colleges and Universities. And that was an acknowledgement that we have global partners. So we were never constraining our membership to only focus on just those within the United States. So in our own even naming evolution as an association, we've always had to acknowledge those kinds of changes. And I think along with that, we've been doing employer studies for almost 20 years, for just about 20 years. And just in that time, we have seen an amazing change in how we think about the skills that we're asking about, the experiences we're asking about. We're asking about AI now.
Wow.
It's microcredentials. These are things that absolutely did not appear in the 2007 employer report.
Oh, for sure. And, who would have even dreamed of a micro-credential back then? It was like, get your college degree, get your college degree. And now there is such a public outcry for the cost of that degree. But when I read your study, it's like the employers want that degree. Somehow that narrative is missing from the public discussion.
Agreed. And I would add, because I hope that I can say just enough in this conversation that people actually go and maybe read the report, at least look at the pretty graphs and then get some take-home messages.
Pictures always work.
There's always hey, we got to work in visuals and accessibility in all kinds of ways. But one of the things I hope people think about when they get to that section on micro-credentials, what does it mean to have like a badge or certificate? I mean, I am old enough to be able to say that when I was an undergraduate, I got a certificate in women's studies. Mm-hmm. So it's not like certificates themselves are new. This was in the early to mid 90s. And
you were 14 back then, weren't you?
I was so young. I was such a prodigy. I was exactly that age. And it's not like that idea of how we bundle learning is different. Here's what I think the difference is, Drumm. I think it's the ability to formalize it.
Yes.
The ability to formalize it, the ability to make it a digital credential that can be posted on LinkedIn, because now that kind of a platform exists. That is the game changer. So in many ways, some of the concepts are not so new. AI in many ways has been around for a very long time. But the ways in which it's used, the ways in which it's infiltrated, the ways in which it gets formalized, the ways it gets embedded, these are the ways in which we are grappling anew with some of these concepts.
Let's just jump right into the report, because You guys have been doing this for almost 20 years. I think I heard you just say 2007 was your first?
Yes, around 2005, 2007, yes.
And we've talked about the 2020 report. We talked about the 2023 report. That one focused a lot on those intangible skills, the abilities to work in teams, critical thinking, analyzing data, et cetera. Your 2025 report is a bit different. You've taken it in some new directions.
Exactly. Well, we've added pieces that I think are
that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, that I think, and I hope, continue to reflect our ability to look at what learning means and I feel strange to say the 21st century, because we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century. So it feels sort of old now, say like the 21st century, 25 years ago. But I hope that what we continue to do in our reports, and I think what excites us about doing each new report, is the ability to take a look at what that learning environment means now and how it's represented. So we have, over the last two reports, 2023 into 2025, I think we are able to make our strongest case ever that civic skills are professional skills.
Yes.
That there is a false binary, that this is a false binary between who students are in their communities and who they are in the workplace. That we can actually connect the dots, and really probably ought to be connecting the dots in ways that make that the learning environment one in which students can increasingly see the alignment between their civic self and their professional self. Mm-hmm. It is those capacities And these are asking questions of employers very specifically around civic skills, civility, the ability to engage in constructive disagreement, the ability to engage in topics in which there are diverse views and they need to come to some kind of mutual acknowledgement of difference in those views. In this study, for the first time, one of, I think, the really critical sound bites is we asked employers what they thought the purpose of college is.
Oh.
And the top two that were basically the same was to have a skilled and educated workforce and to equip informed citizens.
Wow.
Those were the top two. They were right in tandem with each other.
That goes right back to the Clark Kerr model of higher education for the public good.
Sure. Absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And there's so much talk about in higher ed right now, you have to have a return on investment. You're putting X number of dollars. It goes way beyond ROI, or at least it should.
Or it helps reframe what that ROI means.
Yes. Good point.
Right. I started our conversation by talking a little bit about my work and occupations, my background in that really, I'm biased, but really fascinating literature about why people enjoy what they do. And for anybody that enjoys what they do, salary is part of it, but it's by no means all of it. So we have known for a very long time that the idea that students and people in general can derive a sense of purpose from whatever it is they do is meaningful. So the way in which we can connect public purpose, civic identity, contributing to communities, being part of a larger equation, being part of a social network, solving social problems. I'm not going to suggest that students don't want money and don't want a decent or living wage, right? But we shouldn't underestimate, and I think we consistently do underestimate this sense of purpose, of how meaningful it is to have a sense of purpose in the work that you do.
Exactly. It really, in a lot of respects, my dissertation, one of the folks I relied on was a sociology researcher.
Okay.
And we had many conversations around this type of thing. It's not all about the money. It goes into Maslow's hierarchy. How do you get to that self-actualization? It's not working a job. You may be making, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, but if you're not happy doing what you do, the money is not going to be the substitute for happiness. That's got to come from within.
Exactly. We could spend a whole podcast talking on this topic, but I will just mention, if people are really interested in this, probably the organization that knows this best is the Gallup organization.
Oh, absolutely.
The Gallup organization has been studying well-being for decades. They have a 5-part model and in 5 different dimensions of what well-being is. And the dimension of career, or what they call purpose well-being, is actually the most important of all 5 of the dimensions. So it is someone's rating or measurement on that career or purpose well-being that will have the greatest impact on their overall well-being.
Wow.
Goes back directly to this point.
That's neat.
Yeah.
So freedom to learn.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about in many respects. It's the exposure to multiple different points of view. It's civic engagement, being able to have open and diverse conversations. People had strong opinions of this.
They do. So a credit to David Tritelli, who's a good friend and a deeply smart person, who's our vice president of communications at AAC&U. Back in 2022, when we were putting together what would become the 23 report, David said, we're in a really interesting time about how topics can be discussed on campus, the degree to which there is open dialogue, the degree to which there can be open dialogue. So we asked a series of questions that appear in our 2023 report way at the end. And they were questions around it, and had never asked these, ever even thought to ask these of employers. Do employers have an opinion about the kind of learning environment students come from? And so we asked questions like, and I can share with you, for example, all topics should be open for discussion on college campuses. Another question was, as an employer, I would look more favorably upon a degree from an institution known for respecting diverse perspectives. And another question, I would look more favorably upon a degree from an institution that was not subject to government restrictions on what students learn and discuss. What we found in 2023 was that there was zero ambiguity in the idea that employers value these things highly. They do want topics to be discussed. They would look more favorably on those types of institutions. So we re-asked those questions 2 years later, found even higher scores. So to the magnitude of just about half. So 51% said that they strongly agree with statements that students should have access to be able to talk about all topics. Nearly half of all employers strongly agreed. Now, if you put the somewhat agree with it, it shoots way up to 4 out of 5 employers are saying this, close to 90%, super high, but just strongly agree. Almost half of employers say that they would look more favorably on those types of institutions. And then we have some differences across the political spectrum there. But on the whole, we have employers that are just endorsing the fact that students should have the ability to engage, I think we would say, our difficult conversations, our disagreements across perspectives. And this in 2025 was the first time we asked about a constructive disagreement, that as a skill. And when we asked employers about that, do you value the ability for students to engage in constructive disagreement during their time in college as a skill or an experience that they're having? And employers absolutely resoundingly said, yes, that is valuable.
Well, it's not like everybody agrees with you in the workplace or anywhere else. I mean, the image comes to mind, shortly after Trump was elected for his first term, and families across the Thanksgiving table didn't know how to discuss him because, you were either pro-MAGA or you were vehemently opposed. And I mean, that's just continuation from back in the 90s and even earlier. It's all of that on steroids, but you've got to be able to discuss it constructively and be able to say, I understand your point. I'm sorry. I don't agree with it.
Yep, exactly. So that was a clear indicator of, again, the idea that employers care deeply about how students are able to interact in teams. And one thing that we have found really consistently over our employer studies over the years is the high value on teamwork. In actuality, and I always talk about this when I present on just the data and the longitudinal nature of that particular finding around teamwork, I always hasten to add that the prompt isn't just teamwork. It's actually the ability for students to work in diverse teams. So, and then that always gave me the opportunity to say, well, employers really value the ability to disagree. And I think what we finally found in 2025, because we really asked about it, was yes, that it's not just the teamwork, it is the ability to engage in topics and matters in which you don't agree with people. And how will you move through that? How will you find a place of understanding and common problem solving?
And one of the things that really impressed me this time with your survey is you started breaking down political affiliation with some of your questions. And at least some of the things that I read, there wasn't that much of a difference between political affiliation and the way folks answered questions.
I appreciate that, Drumm. I agree. I'm always mindful as somebody who's been a quantitative researcher for vast majority of my career. It's really mostly the methodology I was trained in. And I have an appreciation for how statistics can be read. So it's always validating when somebody else kind of reads it.
Damn liars and statisticians. Yeah.
The fantastic Mark Twain quote. There's always a really great Mark Twain quote for everything. But I agree. And this actually, I thought the other piece was one that we didn't see. And this actually happened in the questions I just was reading you around employers' preference around topics being discussed on campuses. Again, in the 2023 report, we did not find much difference in political party, not anything significant. This time around, we found the same. Like there just wasn't a lot of difference except for independence.
Yes, I saw that.
Independents were actually the ones who ended up being substantially lower. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that, but it does speak to a kind of shift in how we think about and acknowledge, and probably dissatisfaction on both sides of the equation, right? Dissatisfaction on either end of the political spectrum and the growing influence of independence. But they were mostly the significant difference. When we found political party differences, it was because of the independents. It wasn't the polarized split between Democrats and Republicans. It was actually it was the independents who were lower on everything, lower levels of agreement, lower levels of confidence in preparation or value of certain experiences. That's really what we found.
You see in the political polls, it's usually the independents that sway things one way or another. But
Yep.
it's unusual. It surprises me that they were as low as they were in these particular categories.
I agree. It stood out. They were probably the smallest group. We're the smallest group among them. It could have been, these are can be the idiosyncrasies of a sample, but it was an interesting finding from our study.
Moving on, there were 4 main areas that we chatted about. AI. Do we want to go into AI or do we want to go into mindset and dispositions first? You tell me.
Either way, part of in asking a specific question, I'm going to respond with a broader thing, which is it was interesting to kind of think of where to position AI, I thought. And it appears in kind of a funny place in the report. I'll just admit that. We kind of go through a list of skills and abilities and mindsets that have been consistently important. And I kind of I made the decision to sort of isolate how we talk about AI because it really is its own topic. It's kind of this zeitgeist moment. It's very much in the line sight of just about everyone. But it is interesting to think about where it fits in as a skill, as a literacy. I mean, the questions we asked about it were really, how do employers view the importance of students' ability to use AI tools effectively to build their AI literacy and the degree to which they think students are prepared. And we broke that out by employers under the age of 40, those in the tech industry, and also by executives versus hiring managers. So we tried to get some nuance going in how we were thinking about it, because everybody's saying employers think it's important. I think we found that too, for sure. But it seems to be even more important for employers under the age of 40, executives. So those are those C-suite executives, and then also those in the tech industry. We found some significant difference in all of those dualities of either side of the spectrum there. But how it will influence and think about, I write this in the report, how should we think about AI as its own skill? How will we think about AI too in the way that it influences other skills?
Good point.
So how does AI change the way we think about written communication? How does AI change the way we think about creativity? How does AI change the way we think about quantitative literacy? In some ways, the ways that the calculator changed the way we think about what it means to establish and prove quantitative literacy. So I think we get to continue to ask questions about the way in which AI is viewed as its own skill building and the way it will have a massive effect just on the way we understand existing skills that we have always known are important. That feels to me like a thorny bit to chew on. And I don't think we have any answers. I don't think anybody's got any answers on this, but I hope we can continue to contribute again to the conversation in ways that help faculty, student affairs professionals, really all educators on a campus really think about how are they helping students to engage with this. And this is where I was going with this the whole time, is then when we talk about it, how do we talk about mindsets like what it means to be an ethical person, morality, what does it mean to motivation, agency? Does a student have the same level of agency if they put something in AI? Or maybe it's just their ability to get motivated to have a really good AI prompt. So I am continue to be really fascinated by how we think about what this means.
Well, from an AI perspective, to me, and this is just a neophile, because I can spell ChatGPT. I'm real proud of being able to spell it, and I do use it from time to time. for certain things. My team uses it far more than I do. But when I think about how it's going to change things, I look at it like the PC. Okay. When the PC came, there was the killer app of Lotus 123. Initially, there were huge mainframes. We had this small computer on our, well, it wasn't so small back then, but we had this computer on our desk, and people were going, what do we use this for? And all of a sudden, with Lotus 123, the quote killer app, it got people says, managers go, I can do my budget on this. I can do spreadsheets, whatever. And everybody wanted one. With AI, it's completely changing the way we approach things. I think at 5 years, we're not going to have people writing code anymore. AI will be able to do it better than we can. In some cases, they can do that now. So it's changing the roles, and higher ed is going to have to change how they train people, which is why I love what you guys do at AAC&U, because you're looking at what are the skills that employers need. AI is going to be able to do a lot of the knowledge. They're not going to be able to do the human, the resilience, the adaptability, that type of thing, the mindset, the dispositions.
Yes. Yes. I mean, well, and I think these are, well, if anything is underscoring all of this, it's the title of the report. I mean, the title of the report is the agility imperative, how employers view preparation for an uncertain future. So it's, at the end of the day, it is, what are the kinds of skills and abilities, personal capacities that I do believe are built in higher education settings that will keep students agile, nimble, adaptable, right? So that it isn't about the job that exists now. It is, and it's been said many times, but it's truer now than ever. It's about the job that doesn't yet exist, in part because the problems of the future and the problems of our communities and the problems of our global world, our global workplace, don't yet exist.
Yeah.
They may even be emerging in some ways, but we cannot fathom the ways that all of them will emerge and what exactly the shape of the jobs that are created to solve the problems and solve the needs of those future communities, what they will be. So the ability to think about the balance between technical skills and broad skills, something AAC&U has been preaching for a very long time, feels more relevant than ever. And I would hasten to add, and we don't do, there's not a specific kind of question on this in the report, but that will take all disciplines. That will take the thinking and content and inquiry of all of the disciplines, the liberal arts, the professions, all of them.
Absolutely. It makes me think back to one of my original podcast guests. I think she was in the teens, and she put together biotech up at UC Davis, Professor Emirata. In tackling the problems there, they had specialists in biology, in chemistry, in physics, multiple disciplines. And we're all talking PhD level brain power. But that was the type of problems that they were attacking. That's the same thing here. There's so much unknown. It's not that you're going in to guess, but you have to get the most informed minds you can to try and at least figure out where it might be going. I don't think anybody's got a really good idea. Maybe we should just ask AI where it's going. I don't know.
Right. Yes. There you go. There you go.
So, and the role of education becomes even more critical in something like this because you're teaching skills, but more importantly, you're teaching thinking, how to think about issues, and you're teaching motivation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think even the kinds of skills that we've asked about, the 2023, we really leaned, and certainly in 2025, we've really leaned into this idea of mindsets and dispositions are not just the fluffy things on the side. These are rapidly becoming the non-negotiables, that these are every bit as important. When we say, what are employers looking for? They're looking for critical thinking. They're looking for communication skills, right? They're looking for teamwork. We've covered all of this. But we know from our studies in 2021 and 2023, and specifically in 2023, we've asked many more around this. we see, for example, motivation and initiative. 95% of the employers that we surveyed, close to 1,000 employers, said that this was either very or somewhat important. 2/3 said motivation and initiative were very important. Resilience and persistence, right under that. Self-awareness, right under that. And I think our next challenge in higher ed is, how do we make the building of those skills and capacities as clear to students in their journey as they're working through the curriculum and the co-curriculum? This is a great place for those things to be working hand in hand, of how are the experiences students are having inside and outside the classroom contributing to those things, contributing to their motivation and initiative, contributing to their sense of resilience, really thinking about the ways that students persist through failure. I mean, that is, if anything's going to define the workplace, the coming workplace, it is going to be a persistence through failure. These are problems that many of us will not have encountered before, not have encountered in quite the same way. So that sort of spirit of trial and error and failure is going to be important.
Yeah, it's so true. Last topic, because learning is changing.
Mm-hmm.
The role of microcredentials. You guys explored that very nicely this time.
Thank you. Well, we picked this up in our 2023 report as well, because this is such a growing interest to employers, to colleges and universities, certainly to students. I think it's also a really interesting bridge point between secondary education and post-secondary, right? This kind of K through 12 pipeline of how are students really building and bundling. I think that's the important word to use here. How are they bundling their learning in ways that can be made more formal, can be actualized in different ways, that more and more relevant, right? We are living in a time when students can actually post a credential to LinkedIn. So they can go beyond the transcript of what it means to hold their credential, to make those credentials visible. So when you do that, you begin to open up a space where short form, if you will, for lack of a better term, short form credentials can really exist in a way that is innovative, that is stackable. I'm not using language that's anyway new here. The idea of stackable credentials has been around for a while, but we just have a different way of thinking about their relevance. But at the same time, we know that they are highly accessible, and maybe in a way that makes them, and I've heard this phrase time and time again, sort of like the Wild West of micro-credentials, that there's just very little understanding about what does it take to verify these things. Does it matter who's issuing them? How do we validate them, et cetera? So this time around, we asked, for example, what employers believe, who has the most credibility on the issuing of credentials. We hadn't asked something like that before. And we had just about neck and neck of a college or university in partnership with an industry leader. This is different than an employer. We use the language of industry. We used both, actually, but we used industry leader and employer. Industry leader was far higher than just, say, a local employer, for example. And then a college or university, an industry leader on their own was second, just right below that. So I think if anything, it begins to point to, we still have some things to learn about where the credibility lies with these. But I think we're very happy that colleges and university is in the mix on that, and very high on the list of where that would be.
Yeah. And you're seeing more and more accreditors getting into the business of accrediting credentials like this. I know HLC, Melanie Booth, headed up a big project for them.
Correct.
Netchi is doing, and I believe WASC is
Yes.
moving in Northwest, moving in that direction as well. So
yes, I mean, it's absolutely something. I would be remiss if I didn't mention I am a WASC commissioner, and it's absolutely something that in the larger accreditation space we have to be thinking about, because we know colleges and universities are thinking about them too.
What else surprised you about the report this time?
Definitely the way in which employers really enforced the idea that the civic skills are relevant and important. We continued to find that there's a strong age gap difference. We first discovered this in 2021. We found it in 2023. And it is a strong trend line of employers under the age of 40 valuing civic and community-based skills and experiences at far higher rates than employers over the age of 50. They also have more confidence. They think students are better prepared. If I was going to say it really succinctly, Drumm, they're kind of our fan base. I have long suspected there's a generational gap going on. That's what I hypothesized in 2021. And then in 2023, I think we're there now. I think we really have a generational difference in how employers view what is important, what is relevant, what carries the workplace. And frankly, it is great news for higher education. It's great news for the programs that we run. If anything, it kind of reinforces this idea that career centers need to be working with civic engagement centers, that we need to, if ever there was a time to really kind of confront the ways that we are bifurcating and separating, compartmentalizing student learning in different boundaries and sectors and quadrants of the university or the campus that they're at, that just
doesn't work.
It doesn't work anymore. So we have an opportunity to think about how we're aligning resources and aligning our human capital on campuses, for sure.
So what do presidents take away from this report? How can it inform them to make better decisions about their campuses?
Well, I think for sure, thinking about the ROI on career services. I mean, I've heard time and time again the woeful under investment in career services on campuses. And I don't think I'm advocating for giant career services centers. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's literally what the vast majority of campuses can do. But we could be thinking far more robustly about how we engage faculty in embedding career readiness into courses and curricula, how we think about how we help faculty to understand the purpose equation on what they're doing for students when they do that they're not just training students. This isn't vocational training, so to speak. This is really about building students' sense of understanding of the skills they're attaining, their sense of purpose, their sense of aspiration, their sense of meaning. All of these things have been well baked into disciplinary fields for a very long time. But there's an opportunity here to draw those out in different ways. So the ways in which campus leaders, presidents in particular, will think about what those communication strategies look like, how they will rethink what it means to invite faculty into these conversations, hugely consequential.
Yeah, I think, yes, I agree with that. And I remember years ago, one of our kids went to a magnet school, and instead of teaching math, English, whatever, they taught them in streams. They would talk, you had a 6-week stream about environment, or you had a 6-week stream about whatever, and all the subject went into that particular thing. The mathematics was geared toward environmental science, et cetera. It showed kids that what they're learning wasn't just, 2 + 2 = 4 is really important. They show, when you have 2 and 2, it comes to 4, and this is what it means.
Right.
So that's critical.
Exactly.
This has been fascinating. I always enjoy our conversations. You allow me to be the geek that I really love doing. Is like, let's get into the data. Let's get into all this stuff.
Happy to do that.
So, as we always do, my friend, 3 takeaways for presidents, boards. What are the main things that they really need to understand that your survey tells them?
Transparency and communication around the skills that students are gaining, but that has to extend to mindsets and dispositions. We have to do a better job of helping students to understand who they are, how they're approaching the skills that they're acquiring, to give them the confidence to express those skills. That remains as critical as ever, and even more so. What we haven't talked a lot about are the actual experiences that employers value. We always think, well, the coin of the realm for employers is internships. That's true. I'm not saying it's not true. We find that time and time again, but it's important to look at the second one. It's really important to look at what's underneath that experience. In our 2023 report, we saw that jobs on campus, campus-based employment was equally important. In this report, we found that leadership positions were highly valued by employers as a key experience that would make them more likely to hire students. So how can we think more robustly? Because internships are notoriously so hard to scale, how do we think more robustly about the other kinds of experiences that students are gaining, that we can turn those into work and career readiness kinds of experiences? That feels really important to me. And I drop in this note in part around AI. There is an opportunity on our campuses to talk about fear of change.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's saying it. We live in a rapidly evolving, changing economy and workforce with rapidly evolving, changing skills. We have to be agile. We have to be nimble. But there is a layer, if we're really talking about institutional change and transformation, where we need to confront fear of change. And building systems that can change and supporting our faculty and our staff to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if anything, what we are learning from our students and I think from the employers that will eventually hire them, is that they value that agility. They need that nimbleness. So we can't, as institutions of higher learning, then be afraid to change and to not be nimble. We need to model that. We need to ourselves be that agile. Mm-hmm. So what I hope, if there is the final point on the biggest take-home message, it is supporting that agility.
Yeah. I'm going to add one more to it. I typically don't do this.
Please.
But from the report, the big takeaway I saw, besides the breakdown of political parties, et cetera, was that employers really value higher education. That message is being lost in the marketplace because of cost, political differences, et cetera. Employers value higher ed. They value that 4-year degree along with a lot of other things.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It is really, that is our lead finding in the report. It's what you're going to encounter a few pages in. And it is worth nuancing because there's such a powerful public narrative around return on investment, but at the very least questioning it, if not being pretty negative on it. And what we find consistently is that employers really value the work that we do, and leaning into that and thinking about how do we engage employers as partners to understand what we can do better.
Yep. And that's, I think, the key is, as I said earlier, it's easier to change the course of history than a history course, but we need to apply change management to ourselves.
Exactly.
And make sure that we are willing to change in a way that we're asking our students. I mean, they come to us, the traditional student comes to us in a huge time of change in their own lives. We need to be willing to change in our lives to make sure that we can help them.
Agreed.
So, what's next for you, my friend?
Oh my goodness. We will actually, one of the things I hope that we're able to do from this report, because even though it is a robust and full report, there's actually even more that we can be doing, or more that we can sort of spotlight in the kinds of findings that we have, more breakouts that we didn't even put in this. So I am actually hoping that we're going to try to do some more supplemental reports. Something I've long wanted to do, and just trying to find the capacity to do it is something that's on our radar. And give a shout out to my friends at Campus Compact. We're working on an exciting project called the Higher Education Democracy Exchange that includes civic microcredentials as part of a platform for how we advance democratic principles in higher education and how we do that collectively. So a shout out to my friends and partners there. We are very excited about that work too.
Well, very good. Ashley, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. All you need to do is pick up the phone or telegraph me mentally, and you're here, baby.
I appreciate it. Oh, I want to speak in one last thing, which is we will be rerunning our Curriculum to Career Institute at AAC&U in May 2026. Good. So if people are listening and they're interested in how they can think about some ways of embedding career readiness into the curriculum, please check that out. We always have a lot of fun with that.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, my friend, for being on the show. It's always great to see you, and I look forward to the next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Drumm.
Thanks for listening today, and a special thank you to my guest, Ashley Finley. Ashley, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. I look forward to the next time when I can have you back and talk about some more very deep and relevant topics. To my listeners, thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.